Good day, everybody. Welcome to yet another episode of ethBeats, Lessons for Graceful Living. Today, we're really excited to have with us Dr. Andeed Ma. Andeed has a really formidable background. Andeed is an accomplished professional with a diverse range of experiences and expertise in the field of technology and business. He has a passion for innovation and a drive to make a positive impact in society. Andeed has indeed established himself as a visionary leader and an influential figure in the industry, particularly relating to risk management. Presently, Dr. Andeed Ma serves as President and Chairperson of the Governing Council in RIMAS, which is the Risks and Insurance Management Association of Singapore. And Andeed is also the Chairman of the Program Advisory Committee and an Associate Lecturer at the Singapore University of Social Sciences, where he teaches on hyperautomation and introduces students to artificial intelligence. Throughout his career, Dr. Ma has also held several executive positions, focusing on driving growth and shaping strategic initiatives. Dr. Andeed Ma is also writing a book entitled AI for Humanity, Building a Sustainable AI for the Future. The book focuses on AI that draws on the perspectives of risk management from the perspective of AI scientists and looks at how we can help humanity get ready for a world in which humans and AI will coexist for many generations to come. So, Andeed, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you so much.
We've got so much to cover. We are very passionate as well and so excited about the prospects and potential for AI.
Yep.
There's now a lot of talk about it.
Definitely.
And sometimes it might be a bit hard to separate the hype from the facts and where really humanity stands.
Correct.
So you have been involved in AI technologies in different ways over the last few years. Other than the course that you're teaching at SUSS, you are also now writing this book.
Yep.
Do help us to understand what are the current trends and the near to mid-term potential of AI technologies, which, number one, most excite you, and number two, which most concern you, and why.
Thanks a lot, Li Ling and team, for inviting me. You know, I really enjoy continuously learning. I think this is the process we have to adopt when we are looking at artificial intelligence. I think this technology has been around back in 60 years ago, or even 70 years, way back when this term was coined. And I think one of the key things here is all the debates or directions or hypes that are happening right now, there is no right or wrong. But it's really around whether are we all focusing on the right thing, focusing on the direction that would benefit you and I and many generations to come. And therefore, the books that the book that we will be looking at and writing on focuses a lot on humanity, and we really talk about AI for humanity. And of course, in short term, what we are looking at is really people are wondering, should I adopt AI or not? The AI or not to AI is a very big question right now, right? Even early on, before this interview, we're having conversation, right? Should my nephew be using AI? Should I be teaching them AI, etc.? But within the next couple of years, in fact, less than 10 years, I would think, right? Looking at how fast things are moving. In fact, with large language model, we have ChatGPT. The technology itself is not new, right? But why is it now that it is a lot more prominent, right? Fundamentally, there are a few things, right? Governments are no longer looking at this technology being just something that is, a unicorn, right? Something that will not happen, is still in the research stage, that sort of thinking. Governments are investing and leading the way, which is a very, very good, I would say, initiative. Because I feel that the technology itself is something that is organic. So that is, I'm talking a little bit about the long term right now. When everyone can look at AI as organic, which later on we can discuss a bit more. This is when we need to bring in the right stakeholders early, right? And I think fundamentally, a lot of people also talk about technology typically have to reach a certain stage of maturity before the regulators or even the lawyers comes in, right? But this case, because AI is different from other technology, it is an organic technology.
Yes,
and therefore we need
could
to
you
bring
elaborate what you mean by organic technology?
So when it comes to AI, something that we debate a lot about is it has the capability to self-learn.
Right.
And once it self-learn, it self-evolve. Right. And once it self-evolve, it sometimes tends to surprise you in the way they interact and answers you. And that is something that is unusual.
Indeed.
Right. So if today I use a very simple technology like a calculator, a video camera, a mobile phone, it only gets smarter when human upgrades it.
Right.
But AI itself could surprise you.
Yes.
Because you don't need to essentially go through that stage. To have you surprised. So that's something very similar to what we call parenting. And therefore, in our book, we talk about terms like nurturing.
Nurturing.
Yes, and
AI.
nurturing needs the right stakeholders to be involved early.
Yes.
So that's something we essentially felt very strongly about when it comes to AI. And midterm-wise, AI is still going to be very exploratory. Right? There's still going to be a lot of experiment and resulting in a lot of unintended consequences. Right? Which again, risk management has to come in, right? While this discovery process is moving forward. So that's a bit about the long-term, short-term, and mid-term.
Yes. So this idea about AI technology being unique in the sense that it can grow organically, digitally, is something quite profound. It can continually self-learn 24/7, and it can learn from vast amount of data that a human being could not conceivably even absorb in a lifetime. And we need to rest and sleep, but the machine doesn't. So there's a real, conceptually at least, there's a real possibility that machines will indeed become smarter than us humans.
Possibly.
Of course, there is the talk of this term called singularity.
Yes.
Have we reached it or not? Will singularity be somewhere within our lifetime or beyond? Who knows? Right. And so I think you're right that the mindset that we approach AI must be that AI serves humanity and not the other way around. And that as technologists develop AI, they must think of how the AI could be used to serve humankind.
Exactly. I think one key thing that we really talk about is the first principle is really around human over machine.
Human over machine.
Yes. So because we are the ones that create AI, as well as we are the ones who are using AI. So how do we create and how do we use is essentially something that we need to start involving early. And one of the things that really keeps me awake, I would say is really the existential threat that you talk about. And that is when human lost trust in this piece of technology. Because essentially it's not so much of they as a slave to us, but how do we work together? Like if I'm your co-worker, I'm working for you, you're my supervisor. I'm not a slave to you. But we are a co-worker and we learn to understand each other. And as a team, we grew together
Yeah.
and help the companies to grow. So I think essentially, if we could see AI as a piece of technology from a more humane manner, rather than a technology, I think that's when we can overcome, and break through from the fact that AI can harm us, because they will then spare a thought for us. Because while we are losing trust to AI, AI may lose trust to human as well. So that itself can happen.
And you're already speaking of AI in anthropomorphous terms,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So that's really interesting. So there's discussions on how, human beings, as they develop the technology, it must be ethical by design. It must be, trust by design.
Correct. Yeah. In fact, I'm also part of a UK charity group called For Humanity, interestingly. There are about 1,000 contributors worldwide. And there are 5 critical elements that support what we call the infrastructure of trust, which you mentioned, biasness, ethics, trustworthiness, and we also talk about cybersecurity. Right. And the last part, we talk about, the fact that privacy is important to the European. They actually use GDPR as their gold standard to develop some form of AI audit. So, these are the kind of designs that we want to be involved early in managing AI as a system, and subsequently making sure that AI is safe and secure for us.
Right. Indeed. So, focus on the right thing and always focus on what the technology does for humanity. And hence we can then overcome the fear and anxiety of what exactly is.
In fact, it's a huge opportunity.
Indeed.
AI will create more opportunities for us.
I believe so. I'm actually quite positive about the future with AI because it would free us from the mundane, from the repetitive, such that, we can focus on what I believe is the essence of a human being, which is the capacity to dream and the capacity to create.
Exactly.
And so I think it adds more value overall to the evolution of the human race.
Yes. In fact, AI is a very smart companion of us, and like I mentioned, it surprises us sometimes. That is actually when learning happens. And when that piece of learning happens within a professional like yourself, who's a lawyer, it actually adds so much value beyond what you could imagine. And that gets reflected back to AI, and AI reflects back to you. I think that's what people talk about, the term augmentation. In the industry means. So augmentation happens in this manner, and it's actually organic in nature.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Super interesting. Yeah. So you are on the board as well, on the board of advisors of the NUS Alumni Ventures, which is a non-profit. Southeast Asia's first student-run angel investment network.
Yes.
So this group comprises angel investors, venture capitalists, NUS alumni and students.
Correct.
And so, you do a lot of admirable things like
Thank you.
mentor startups in their journey of growth. So in a life cycle of a company, I think a startup is most at risk of burning out. Burning out of capital, burning out of ideas, burning out of energy. What are your key advice? What might be some of your key advice to startups on the do's and don'ts of entrepreneurial life?
Yeah, this again is another part of my passion, because I always believe that startups are the next generation of SMEs, and then multinational enterprises. Right? So all big companies started as a startup. And of course, when we talk about early stage startup, I always help the founders to understand themselves. That is really important because they need to get ready for this journey. And that's actually very crucial because for an early stage startup, there isn't financial numbers. There isn't anything that you could really do a due diligence, right? Like how you do for the growth stage, late stage startups, or even big companies, listed companies. So a lot of trust, same thing like how we trusted AI, is upon the founder, right? So a lot of times when I'm doing the mentorship, I hope no one is listening for those who I'm coaching, but if you are, it's part of the test. a lot of time I'm trying to dissuade them not to start a business.
Mm.
Because that is actually a way to identify whether are they ready and are they well prepared for the kind of problem they are solving.
Yes.
As well as, do they have that tenacity?
Yes, tenacity.
Right? Yes.
Yeah.
Whether they have that tenacity to move forward. And these are all very, very strong characteristics to ensure that you cross that chasm to move to the next stage, which is the scale-up stage. And often not, if founders are intimidated, or they couldn't answer the question, they couldn't carry on, when not myself, but other mentors are helping to advise them on, then it is actually better for them not to begin and accumulate some experiences first. Or while you're starting up, accumulate all the scars you need in the battlefield.
Right. So the do's of entrepreneurial life would be to know yourself fundamentally, and be aware of where are the pitfalls and the risks of the venture that you are intending to carry out.
Yes. Do what is right for your business, and not what other people tell you.
Yes. Yeah, correct. Do what is right for your business, and not follow other people's directions or perhaps parents' expectations.
Yes. In fact, just 2 nights ago, I was speaking to a founder. He was asking me whether his idea is in the red ocean. And my answer to him was very simple. Could you get any logos, any companies in this red ocean? And are you getting fast enough than the ones that are in the red oceans? If the answer is yes, then you have a market. This is not a red ocean to you. So it is not about whether, it's about whether the problem you're solving, someone is willing to pay, and the pain is pain enough for someone to want to use. Right? And it can be anywhere in the world. It can be even in the red ocean, where there's so many sharks, but you still have a piece of the pie that is only for you. So this is something that founder needs to be very, very disciplined on, right? Because I think early stages, a lot of startup founders might think that, I'm just trying, I'm just experimenting. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. Again, if you relate that to AI, it could be dangerous, because you could be taking investors' money and burning it and not returning them back. Or you could be wasting your own time and damaging relationship with other customers in terms of trust, because they trusted you to basically solve the problem that you pitched them on. So again, if you relate that to AI, it's fundamentally the same as well.
Okay. Yeah. So know yourself, know the business, know the landscape. Don't follow other people's expectations of you. I think when we talk about a very emerging and new technology like AI and the entrepreneurial journey, I think what is the common theme for both of these things, not that they are entirely comparable, is the creativity and the ability and the daringness to take risk, calculated risk, measured risk, but going forth to pursue your dream. Because I think that is just inherent in us humans. And I think entrepreneurs very much more than others want to create their own destiny, want to chart their own path. So my next question to you would be, how can a business, whether it's a startup, a scale-up, or a mature company, keep abreast of all these technological changes that are happening so fast in order to stay ahead of its competitors?
I think one of the key things here, I bring in SWOT analysis, right? So a lot of people don't use SWOT the way it should be used. I think partly schools has to play a very, very important role here, right? Which I think they are doing that now, with all the incubators that schools are running. But essentially, if you understand SWOT analysis, the strength and weaknesses is about questioning internally yourself, right? So as a startup, one of your key strengths is agility. Agility means how fast are you capturing the market in order to turn profitable, in order to cross the chasm, to move into the next phase of scale-up startup. And when it comes to the growth startup, which are scaling up, I think they are at the stage of whether they are using the right metrics to measure themselves, right? So, of course, I've been through companies where they are using the wrong metrics. So, example, you might be using a B2C metrics when your business is a B2B.
Okay.
Yep. So, there's no B2B business that measure daily active users, right? Because that is more on the consumer or app-based, right? That sort of things. And hardly they measure churn rates, right? Because that is again a consumer metric. In the B2B, sales cycles are longer, right? It's a lot about relationships, about value selling, right? Value adding, right? So these are things that I think scale-up companies, growth companies should get the right talent or experienced executives to help them to run. And it's also the time when they have to break away from the founder's mindset.
Founder's mindset.
Yes, the founder's mindset is important at the startup stage.
Okay.
But at the growth stage and scale-up stage, it is still important. For example, I work for a cybersecurity company. Company has been around for 24 years, right? And they are listed in NASDAQ as well. So one of the interesting things that we heard from customers is that, wow, the founder is still around. Because we trusted this company to manage our most sensitive cybersecurity matters. And we like that the founder is still around. He's the chairman, etc. So you can see the dynamics very different. But who is running is a CEO that can execute, right, globally the business. And that's where we talk about, more mature, more, the listed companies, where they may face challenges around plateauing with their flagship innovations. So they should be anticipating their S-curve and creating new ones.
Okay.
And to me, this is actually a cycle. So when you're starting to create new ones, new innovations, you're actually entering into the startup phase again. Right. So essentially, I think even for RHT is going through that process as well. Right. So every S-curve will then eventually lead to the next generation of business. And this continues on and on. And that makes 100 years business like IBM and others still exist today.
Yeah, that's a really good perspective for us to bear in mind. Yeah, so could you elaborate a little bit on the founder's mindset and how it evolves as the enterprise evolves?
I think one of the early companies is a US company. Founder is very passionate. He's really the pillar of the business. He's also very emotional, and he knew that. And he knows that when he reached that stage of growing and becoming a mature company, he can't be the one leading anymore because he's too sentimental. Right? And remember I mentioned that metrics matter.
Yes.
Right? You can't give a different so-called preferential treatments to the different customer, right? And that kind of founder's mindset has to be, it's hard to remove, right? But it can retain in the company. And therefore, someone else who can actually lead the next stage has to come in to take the baton, right? So you could see that happening in many of the American companies. While Chinese companies are slightly different, right? From where I came from previously. I think they still believe in the individuals being able to learn themselves and break away from the founder's mindset and move themselves into the CEO mindset, into the board mindset.
Yeah.
So they believe in training the individuals to continue to think that way.
Yes.
Yeah. So that is something that I found very interesting.
Yes. I think where the founder's mindset is important would be the values and the culture of the organization. Right. So what values does the organization stand for, and what values does the organization intend for it to carry on for generations to come? But the negative side about founder's mindset might be then too blinkered and not aware of one's own shortcomings or weaknesses, and having maybe too many yes men around and not enough of that daringness of other people to counteract arguments, different points of views that, might just, it's a form of risk management.
It's a form of risk management. In fact, it's very internalized kind of characteristics, right? It's the same as like, you need someone who is very dynamic to be able to change in that way, like how the Chinese company runs. But as I've seen so many founders, myself, right, as a founder of my own business before, we have the passion of starting something. It's in us. That is our strength. You can't take it away, right? And that role is suitable only in when you are either an early stage startup or you join a large company where you become an entrepreneur and continue to strengthen that attributes of yours to help that company to get the next S curve going. So there's always opportunity. It's just you need to know what is your strength and weakness and position yourself right.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would say a lot of founders are the one, they are actually the go-getters.
Yes.
They initiate things and they get bored. In fact, after acquisitions, I'm sure RHT has done a lot.
Yeah.
Founders don't typically stay more than 3 years. Right? They are just itchy and moving on to start the next one.
Yeah. So it's being aware of stagnation.
Yes.
And always keeping an eye out for the next generation of leaders that perhaps need time for you to cultivate and to mentor and
yes.
And
in fact, I encourage some of the founders to come in as a mentor as well. In fact, along the way I do identify good founders and I bring them into my ecosystem to mentor the next generation. Because then they will see themselves in other people's shoes.
Indeed. So I guess that's also a continual journey of growth and renewal.
Yes.
And that also then helps an organization keep up with its own competitors because they're always bringing in new blood, considering new perspectives and being aware of the changes that are taking place outside.
Exactly. Yep. And along the way, you make strategic partnership.
Indeed.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. And as AI technologies become more advanced and complex, and business operations everywhere become more digitized and automated, how can businesses or business owners keep abreast of the different risks that may emerge from these new technologies? And how can businesses mitigate such risks?
I think one of the key elements of risk is people need to understand that it is proactive. Right? So managing risk is really a form of discipline and habit. Right? So I always share people, risk itself changes every single day. And I always share with my community that today's risk is not tomorrow's risk. Right? And that essentially forms a continuous improvement, which is one of the key risk principle that RIMAS advocate, and as part of the ISO 31000 risk management guidelines we talk about, right? So continuous improvement is important. And another way to look at risk is that can we achieve as close to our ideal state as possible with the least variation, and if variation ever happens, how do we use various risk treatment options to help, right? So knowing the risk is one part of the process. Treating the risk is another part of the process. So when you understood this, you realize that you can't react to a risk. You can't just use verbs like, oh, we are mitigating this now. This doesn't happen, right? You only do mitigation plans way before something happens.
Right.
And when even something has happened, you already put in place treatments, right? So people will buy insurance, right? Or people knew that they are not good in this trade, they will work with vendors to help them out, right? Or they simply knew that this is a risk they are willing to accept, right? Or what most people will do is to avoid. Yeah. And once you avoid, the chances of you being affected, right, the likelihood of the occurrence and the impact of the occurrence becomes a lot harder to manage. and that can have unintended consequences as well.
Right.
Yeah. So that's something. Again, there's no zero risk in the world, right? So again, that's why I mentioned that risk is a habit, it's a discipline, and something that I bring down even to the startup level, where people will think that, oh, risk management for a startup, why do we need that? Right? It should be for a large company.
Yeah, or they may think risk management is such a compliance
Yeah.
issue. I'm more sales and marketing.
Yep.
You risk people, you hold me back. That is quite a constant refrain that we hear from
Exactly.
entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I like what you said about risk management being something that's proactive.
Yep.
So it's not so much reactive and defensive, but in a way, being offensive, taking steps to prevent the
Correct.
risk from happening in the first place.
Exactly.
And always being aware of how the risk profile of the organization is changing.
Exactly. Yep. In fact, there are always areas that you can't cover, right? And part of risk management, there are pillars such as crisis management, business continuity, and so on and so forth, right? So all these are plans that you can't make on the move or on the fly. It has to be something that you have it and you practice it. It's not just a tabletop exercise.
Right.
Of course, with black swan event like COVID, right? I think a lot of banking sectors would have experienced it, especially the back end office, where they are dealing with high value trades, high frequency trades. You can't essentially plug out machines and bring it home, right? And a lot of these workers become essential workers, or executives become essential workers, because none of the BCP plan could be activated, because they have never experienced it before. So you can see this is a proof of there are situations where risk can come, right, and that you can't actually cover that, right? So there's I'm 100% risk free. There's no such thing.
Yeah.
But how are you able to basically overcome that? And then have that plan well thought through, and subsequently, will a pandemic happen again? The answer is definitely yes. And that's when we get a lot better prepared. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I think key to what you have said so far is that proper risk management is actually part of good corporate governance.
Yes.
A company cannot profess to be robust in its governance if it doesn't take robust risk defense measures.
Exactly. And a risk management activity is a habit because it's not a one day or one time exercise. Right? So we wake up every day, we brush our teeth, we take a shower. It's the same thing. Right? And we have to treat risk today different tomorrow. And that's why this is a very tough job. Right? And it requires everyone to work together with the risk manager. They are not here to police you. They are not here to find fault on you. They are here to help you.
Correct. It's very much a balance, right?
Correct.
Between the pursuit of profit and
exactly
understanding risk.
Yes. That's why I think we must have a tagline where everyone is a risk manager.
Right.
So this is a very important message as well.
Everyone is a risk manager.
Everyone is a risk manager, right? So that's where we can play a better role.
Okay. And speaking to you, it's very clear that you're passionate about AI ethics and governance, even as you help companies innovate and manage risk in their digital and business transformation. So if listeners to today's podcast were to leave this podcast with a few key thoughts about AI governance and ethics, right?
Sure.
What would these be?
Love to share, but before sharing, I want to define the term ethics, and because there's a misconception of moral and ethics.
Okay.
So I think moral is really about the what, right? So whether something is right or wrong, right? While ethics is really the action, the how, right? So how you actually carry out yourself, right? How you carry out yourself to make something moral, make something right, make something wrong. So it's the same thing as AI can be used for good, as well as AI can be used for bad.
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And I think I'm very, very lightened to hear, I think this week we have the ATX AI, the formation led by MDA,
Yes.
right, on the
Yes.
AI Verify Foundation. There is a very classic example of when regulators are involving early, right? You mentioned that AI is still in a very nascent stage, very early stage, and the governments are involving very early to ensure that this piece of technology is being used for good in the right manner. And because the technology itself can amplify, I think that's the key thing. When you mentioned early on about AI can help you so much faster and so much wider, right, as a domain. The amplification can go two ways.
Two ways, yes.
So can we prevent bad actors from hitting? The answer is no. Right? That's when we put in governance. We don't just look at AI as a piece of technology, where in the past, a typical piece of technology, people would put AI governance on the technology, but not on the people who creates or use. Right. But today with AI Verify, for example, or for AI governance and ethics community, we are looking at the people themselves, right? How are we looking at this piece of technology being created? And is it created to harm mankind through indirect manner like climate changes? All right. Or is it created for good? Right. So for example, able to collect data, right, to help to improve climate changes, help to improve society of balancing, etc. So there was also this area where I integrated how I taught startups into how we should look at AI. So who are we actually serving when we are using AI? So this actually resulted in myself and Dr. James writing the book on AI for Humanities, how to build a sustainable AI for the future. Because we really see that, that United Nations has put in so much thoughts around what are the 17 goals we need to do for the nation. So when we are building a value proposition canvas, for example, we always talk about what's the job to be done for the customer. So we always ask ourselves, what is this customer now when it comes to AI as a solution? The customer is humans. Right. How are humans able to benefit from this? Right? And how am I going to help the marginalized individual, right, to learn better, to get food, to get out of poverty? Are we able to use like autonomous vehicle to deliver food? Right? Are we able to use drones to make sure that crops are growing well, to sustain the world population intakes? I think these are very important topics that in the past we may not have the right technology, but I strongly believe that artificial intelligence is here to help us to do that. So this to me is really AI for good. And that if collaboratively partners, the world, different nations can have the same mindset, having this podcast all over the world talking about the same thing, I think we will reach the state of AI for good. And the idea of whether AI will replace job, the idea of whether AI is going to be an existential threat to us, I think will not be the key thing that it's on top of our mind. It will be really about, how can I help you to help us? And this entire augmentation and reflection is infinity. Right. So that is actually one of our symbol that represented the book.
Yes, I saw.
So the infinity symbol really works that way. And how do we balance this through AI ethics and governance? So not just governing the technology, but also governing the people who are using and creating it.
Indeed. Yeah. So I think just to backtrack a little bit and just to remind listeners that the book that Dr. Andeed Ma is talking about is going to be published by John Wiley and Sons next year. It's entitled AI for Humanity, Building a Sustainable AI for the Future. I've already seen it on Amazon.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I think this leaves us a positive end to this interview.
Thank you
because
so much,
AI for humanity, AI for good, it really signifies that we are still in the driver's seat. And the involvement and the the growth of AI tech really calls for more collaboration,
Yes.
not just among the technologists, but with the politicians, the
Yes.
governments, regulators,
Exactly.
the philosophers and the ethicists,
Yes.
on what is moral and what is ethical,
Yeah.
and designing it to be ethical and trust,
Yep.
digital trust to begin with,
Correct.
so that we never have to consider, oh dear, this machine self-taught itself into something that is against our interests.
Exactly. Wow,
Yeah.
Lily, you summarized my book pretty well. I mean, I really hope that this book is for everyone. You know, be it politician, you know, engineers or business leader. Everyone should be on the same page. I feel that when everyone is on the same page, then we will be debating in the right direction. And that debate is to basically help humanity and AI to coexist and build a better future. And the future may look very different from now,
Yeah.
right? And of course, today's topic is not a metaverse or Web3, but that is probably the next phase where AI will have the capability to bring humanities into.
Okay. So, Andeed, today, if we were to just sum up what we've discussed with, say, 3 key takeaways on AI technologies and risk management, what would these be?
I think don't treat AI as a technology,
Okay.
right? Treat AI as as you are the parents to it. I think that's number one.
Yeah, so the mindset change.
Yes, it's the mindset that every one of us should first accept, be aware, and later on be educated on, and then we will progress from there. When it comes to risk management and governance, I think don't shy away from doing it. It is not an additional cost. It is it's a part and parcel of your life, right? I think we do risk management at a personal level, but when we can do it together for our companies, that is tremendously important.
Yeah.
Right. And last but not least, I think for those who are not yet understood or knowing what AI or what the future of AI is like, don't get too worried, right? Because you are already part of this technology already. But while we are enjoying the fruits of some of this technology, the bad actors are still around. There's no way AI can eliminate bad actors. Because I'm part of the cybersecurity ecosystem as well. In fact, I pitch a lot around the more AI is successful, the more attack surfaces are created. And those unintended consequences that are happening are surfaces that we can't see. And that's where these are loopholes where there will still be bad guys that were taking advantage of it. Right? So things like scams and stuff, right? So it will still come, but don't let that sort of bring you down and lose trust. Come together, work together, and make it good.
Yes. So, in a way, proactive risk management might be costly, but not doing risk management at all would be even costlier.
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay. So I think with that, we've come to today's the end of today's podcast. Thank you very much again,
Thank you,
Dr.
Lily.
Andeed Ma. And to our listeners, we hope that you've enjoyed today's session. Thank you.
Thank you.